Hello, hello, hello. It's good to be back. I'm Anu Martins, and this is my podcast on, well, it's my podcast. And my chosen topic has been on infertility, and I'm really glad to have you here. I do not take your attention for granted because attention in this present world is really valuable. And because of that, my aim and my hope is that with every discussion that we have and with every podcast that we publish, that I'm providing value to you regarding this chosen topic, raising awareness, um, increasing education, and providing encouragement, most importantly, to people that are going through infertility. So, today, let's see what we'll be talking about. I will be unashamedly using, um, well, loosely based on something I have written before, because I do have a blog that I shared my story and started to, explore this topic based on my own experiences. And I think what I would like for us to talk about today would be sort of a very, because it's hard to summarize infertility. Once you do a deep dive, it's really deep. But sort of an overview, yes, on how to navigate, how to overcome, or how to, to reach that end goal of having a child or having a baby. Um, so let's go. So the first point I'd like to refer to would be how you need to take a deep dive. The first thing you need to do is, so if you're in that gray area where you think maybe there's a problem, you're not sure, you've been trying to get pregnant, you thought it would happen, well, you're just, thing is just suddenly in your consciousness. What I would suggest would be to be intentional about it. You need to face, you know, take the bull by the horns and decide that, okay, do I really want to get pregnant? Am I really trying to get pregnant? Because you'd be surprised how it's so easy to just sort of leave it, vaguely in your mind, like this is something I want, this is something I want, something I don't want. Even though I do think in recent times people have become more intentional about whether they want or they don't want, to have a child. Whatever the case, if you're facing infertility or if you're facing the prospect of, potentially you've subconsciously wanted to have a child, you've been trying to get pregnant, or you haven't used protection for a while, or you and your wife, just to say that okay, let's go for it, let's start a family. You need to be intentional. Educate yourself on fertility, right? What does it take to get pregnant? What does it take to have a baby? Do I have any medical conditions that may be precluding it? Am I overweight? Am I, struggling with obesity? Do I have a hormonal issue? Is there a disease process going on? Is there hypertension? Is there diabetes? Is there heart disease? Is there a specific, condition going on in the reproductive system, whether for, the male or the female partner, for example? So just basically check, do I have a clean bill of health? Do I need to just get myself checked out and, get that tick to be sure that everything is okay? Or basically to check your health status and see if you're good. To see a fertility specialist for an assessment. If necessary, you start with a GP, if at all. But the point is to be intentional. And even if it's not from a medical perspective, from a life choices thing, that okay, is this something I'm ready for? Is it something I want to do? And find out what it's all about, because part of what makes dealing with infertility so difficult is the fact that there's a wide array of potential negatives that you may need to overcome. So the earlier you get started, the better, and the sooner you narrow in on if there's an issue and how to deal with it, the better. So my first point is to take a deep dive and explore all of that. My second point, which I've started to build on actually, is to carry out a thorough needs assessment. So if, for example, okay, maybe let's say you've been married for a while, or let's say you're ready to start a family and just hasn't happened, carry a thorough needs assessment, have yourself checked out, um, and let's say, for example, you have been given a clean bill of health, just as an example. There are no reproductive issues, male factor, female factor, everything is good. Okay, so it's like a what next? What do I need to achieve this goal? How do I make sure I get pregnant? If recurrent miscarriages, for example, has been the issue, what do I need to do, or how do I need to approach this in partnership with my managing physician on preventing this or overcoming this, that sort of thing. Um, so ask all the questions you need to ask of your medical professionals. Explore the internet, check out people's stories, but always know there's always that disclaimer. The fact that something happened to someone in a certain way doesn't mean it applies to you. This podcast, for example, and this discussion is purely for informational purposes. It does not in any way preclude medical advice from your treating physician in any way. Very important. So it's purely for information, but be armed with information, um, and find out what it is you need to do. If there's anything you need to do, and how to do it in partnership with the right professionals. And of course, also with your loved one or loved ones. My third point, on this discussion would be to keep an open mind. So, just before this episode, I got the question around, okay, so did you you had a natural birth, you had a natural baby, or rather, you had your own biological child. Did you ever consider adoption? And I think you were surprised to hear when I said, I'm like, no, because for that particular context, at that particular point in time, with what I was going through, it wasn't an option. It doesn't mean that I closed my mind to it. It's just that it wasn't necessarily the right path for me. So what I'm trying to say is that you need to keep an open mind for so many reasons. And the reason why this particular question was important, was because within our own cultural context where, we grew up and how we grew up, traditionally adoption has been sort of frowned on. It's only in recent times that people are trying to break that stigma, because it's actually a ridiculous one. Because I personally think adoption is such a beautiful thing, because you're going against maybe the so-called natural instinct of loving someone that came from you and has your DNA, to loving someone who does not. And that sort of, in my opinion, is a very clear-cut definition of love. It's like true love. But without getting too philosophical, what I'm trying to say is that in the place of wading through the wilderness of infertility and carrying out a thorough need assessment, doing a deep dive, you do need to keep your options open, because you don't know how your story is going to evolve. You don't know what path you may need to take. If I just want to use myself as a simple example, before all of this happened, I never imagined I would need assisted conception. So, something that seems so basic now, but now we have a myriad of paths that you could take, So if you have dogmatic in your thinking, if you have certain strongholds and you're like, no, well, on one hand, it's actually fine, because you need to do what you're comfortable with and what you're happy with. But on the other hand, keeping an open mind is good, because then you could be getting to your promised land and achieving your goal using a means that maybe you hadn't thought about before. Surrogacy is one example where in more recent times, especially with lots of celebrities and people of influence going that route, it's coming out into the fore that this is an option, So keep an open mind. Very important to keep an open mind. You don't know where your journey could lead. You don't know what treatment options your doctor would, prescribe. You don't know what opportunities you may have. So keeping an open mind is very important. And the last point I would like to make is to let time work for you and not against you. What do I mean by that? It's one of the difficulties of dealing with infertility and and going through the journey. It's time bound. The fertility of either male or female is affected by age. Age is time related. If you're 35 years and above, it's different from if you're 35 years and below. And so, for example, it's very clear that if you're over the age of 35, you do need to work quickly to address the issue, get pregnant. Not by any means necessary, but, do what you need to do and, get it done. But if you're 22 and you have medical issues and what have you, don't just sit and assume that things will get better or what have you. You need to work with the time that you have. You need to work quickly. There's a lot to be done. There might be a lot of money that you need to spend. Um, and that in itself could potentially weigh you down. So, my encouragement in this particular episode and around this particular point is do what you have to do, make the most of what you have, or be intentional about it. And, hopefully your efforts and our encouragement to you would help get to the end point. And if that end point is to have your baby, just to have a baby, whether it's through adoption or whatever, to go through assisted conception, whatever the case may be, the point is getting from the point of assessment, doing a deep dive into what you have to do, keeping an open mind as you progress, and then working with the time and the resources that you have. And I hope this has provided some information and maybe a sense of how to strategize, maybe also even a sense of urgency, without necessarily putting pressure, just being mindful that let's work together, let's get this done, let's encourage each other, and let's face this mountain, this giant, and defeat it. And we'll see you, or I will see you. We'll see each other on the next episode, see or hear, as the case may be. Till then, take care. Bye.